recording so that, because this is good
Oh,
stuff.
yeah. So like I try to get them to leave when I get there because it's also really awkward for me to go like shoving, their things in their pillow, grabbing their toothbrush. Like it's so much easier if they're just gone. Like, oh, your cat calendar's real cute, but so I blame it on the photographer. I just say like, hey, if you could just like get all the lights on, do everything that Allison told you to, because a good stager also will tell them that they need to have, every lamp on, stop all their fans. That's another thing that I saw. Oh gosh, who was like the original Todd Kemp? Do you know?
I don't know.
Like he was like one of the first. I can't remember the name of the company. Anyhow, he was shooting a house for Brandy Kelly the other day that I was showing, and I was noticing that he left the fans on. And I went back and looked at the pictures, and they're blurred in the photos.
Oh, no,
Kidding me? I mean, that is like. But I think he's also like $89 now.
So. And there is, I love that point too, because there is something to that, right? So Norman and Young, I mean, they're more expensive than Landon is. And so Landon will just tell you like, hey, I don't do that because I don't charge as much as these other guys. So what you get with me is more of a point and shoot type situation. And so that's okay. And so some people would prefer to pay less and do that. To me, I'm like, if I'm going to pay anything, I might as well pay for the top, like, especially if I'm going to charge my clients the top. And that way, then I just have a very consistent experience too, across all clients, because when I go out onto something like Zillow, right, and look at, hey, here's all the listings that Amy's had, it doesn't matter if like, oh, this one was only 189,000 and this one was 550,000. When they look at it, they're looking at your portfolio of this is what Amy normally does for her clients, or this is how her houses normally look out there. And so I'm trying to have that real consistent feel so that way a client can know like, yeah, if I come to you, this is what it's going to look like. The bed skirts are going to be straight and the lights are going to be on and the windows are going to be whatever. Just trying to get that consistency.
So you said even with like a $100,000 investment property, how much is a photographer?
It just depends. So I don't know, Erin, how much are you paying for just like a regular Norman and Young static photo shoot?
I don't ever just pay for that.
I know. So that's what I don't ever just pay for it either, because we normally are doing video with it. So our normal package is a 1-minute video and I guess 40 images, and it's $416 for just the photographer. And then we've also paid the $250 to Allison for the staging. So it's around, I normally tell, it's around $750 for each listing for us to kind of get it ready to go.
Okay.
I want to say they're at like 150. I'm trying to pull it up. You have to put an address in.
Yeah, like 189 maybe is what I was thinking.
Yeah, maybe now that.
Okay, I'm going to share my screen to show you kind of an example of why even a crappy house looks good with good photography. So this is a house that Spencer and I bought several years ago as a rehab. We actually lived there for a little bit, but this was the before picture, right? I mean, obviously this is not a great situation. We got different kinds of floor, terrible paint, like an awful refrigerator, whatever. Like it's not good. And you can't really see through the windows because the windows were so old, you couldn't really see through. But it at least like it's bright, it's fresh. It doesn't feel like probably as bad as it smells. Like, how I was saying, like a lot of times I'm looking at houses and I can smell them through the pictures. Like this at least feels a little bit better. So again, not that, this is not a good house, but it photographs well-ish. I mean, and we were just taking before pictures so that we could have like, hey, this is what it looked like before. So it wasn't that we were trying to have anything to really even go on MLS or anything. But even on little houses after, so like these were some of the after shots. I still think having kind of that freshness and that nice picture, even on $100,000 house, which I can't remember what this one sold for, but not a whole lot more than that. to me, it just helps again with that consistency and look, and also telling the story of that house too, that's what we're seeing. More consumers, I know they're saying that like, oh, more consumers are starting their search online, whatever. Also, more consumers are just discriminating and eliminating showings from what they're seeing online. I mean, 40 images that we can have per house now, that's a lot of images. And so a lot of times the consumer can go through and see like, okay, yeah, that bedroom would be a no for me, or that master bath, like there's no way that I would want to invest what I need to invest to make that master bath work for me. So I'm just not going to show the house. And so we do want to have as many good images as possible, or at least telling that story as possible, so that way the homeowner gets as much shot for those people as possible. Okay. What I was going to talk about was Box Brownie, unless Erin, do you have anything else on photography or anything?
No, it is 40 photos is $175, and that does include that branded website.
Oh, good. Which I don't ever use a branded website, but I guess maybe you could. The branded website is really, I guess, more for coming soon type situation, because to me, once the images are out on MLS or whatever, that you wouldn't ever need to use the branded website. But anyway. All right, so Box Brownie is this company out of Australia, actually, and they are really good at virtual staging and retouching of images. So just like you can see here on their cover sheet, they can take something that looks like this on the left and turn it into something like this on the right for $1.60, y'all. I mean, super cheap. Don't feel like you need to learn everything about Photoshop. They can do it for you. They can do stuff like this, virtual staging, take a house, empty house, and put in furniture. They're also real big. I met the owner a few years ago, and he's real big on ethical staging, which I didn't even know that was a thing. But so like on something like this, they're not trying to show 2 couches and a table and all this if that wouldn't actually fit in that room. So sometimes you'll see staging where it like shows like a king size bed in this like 10 by 10 room. Like, well, that's not really reality. You can't really fit that in there. And so anyway, we've been really happy with what they've had on here. And this is also, they can do item removal. So like somebody sent in this picture with all the stuff on the countertops, and then all this came off. So they can do that, again, relatively inexpensively. So if I've got a homeowner that like, I really do feel like I'm going to offend them, or they didn't get the house totally ready, I ended up with an image, or maybe I did like, kind of like what I was saying, I got all the images and I was like, oh crap, I forgot to fix that one thing. I forgot to remove that one thing. This is a great option to go in and have some of those things removed. And they can do the twilight photos for you without it having to be at twilight. So they can do that, and it looks really good. They can do the green grass. They can do renderings. We don't do very many of the like full renderings. Look at that. From that to that's crazy. So Spencer does this on every transaction now, where he draws out the floor plan. It's actually not that one. It's hold on. He does this. So he just draws out on a piece of paper, kind of the floor plan, right? He doesn't measure it all out. He doesn't have it like all totally right, but he just draws it out kind of like this on the left, and they return an image like that on the right for $24. So to me, that's, again, just shows a more unique value proposition, right? More that, hey, this is something that we provide for our clients to make sure that those buyers really understand the floor plan before they walk in your door. This has been really effective for us during COVID too, to try to help limit showings. Like normally sellers want as many showings as possible. Well, lately, they've wanted less showings. They want really meaningful showings, people that are going to make an offer on that house. And so by having this already out there, that can help with that too. The other thing that we use Box Brownie for is the 360 virtual tours. So just like on this, where you can just do that like walk through dollhouse experience. So I don't know if y'all have seen that out there. It's not for everybody. Not everybody loves to experience a house like that, but it is a good way for a consumer to experience it and then decide, is that something that I want to go in and see in person? And so Spencer has this Rico, I don't know, Rico something 360. And so he has like a little, it's a camera on a little monopod is what it's called. And so it stands up on the thing. And so he'll put it down, go out of the room, press picture on his phone. It shoots a 360 image. Then he goes into the next place, puts it up, shoots a 360 image, puts it in the next place, shoots a 360 image, then just sends all of that to Box Brownie. They stitch it together where then they have it where you can do the full walkthrough. He didn't have to actually do any of that or know, oh, that one didn't work right, or know kind of what their situation is or how to make it work to go and do. Which I don't know if this one is working right, but oh, hold on. Oh. So it's a little more, like I say, this side is a little more of a, like a little more smoke and mirrors, I guess. Like, I don't know, parlor tricks, right? Like, I don't know that this sells the house, but this is really cool as far as like when they're sharing it with their parents that live in Phoenix, you know, and so mom and dad can go through the house, the kids can go through the house, like, you know, whatever situation like that where other people can more experience the house with them. I know, like, you know, Spencer's sister looking for a house in DC. We've been on all the sites in DC a lot more, looking for houses and looking at houses that they're looking at and that kind of thing, kind of experiencing the search alongside them, even though we're not a decision maker, we're not really part of it. And so this kind of stuff can help elevate you from that perspective and help elevate you again in a listing presentation. If you're saying, hey, I do this, this, and this, and that's why you should hire me. Okay. Okay. All right. Let's take a step back from Box Brownie. Does anybody else have any questions about pictures, or since we jumped into that and didn't jump into listing presentation? Okay. Well, I'm going to go through the listing presentation that we have right now out here. And then we can, and, you know, again, feel free to stop me at any point if y'all have questions on anything or something you don't like, or you think you do better, because I normally start my talk about listing presentation. I told Haley this yesterday that I normally start and say, I'm probably the worst one to teach the class on listing presentation because I don't do a lot of traditional listing presentations. So listing presentations, there are so many different ways that you can approach it, because it's not always that the consumer really wants somebody to come in and walk them through, you know, A to B to C to D. Hey, this is what I'm going to do for you. A lot of times they already have a relationship with us and they're really just trying to find out like more of the details about what specifically is going to happen for us. It's not that they're shopping us against another company. They really just want to know what is going to happen when they list their house. So it gets to be a little bit more like a buyer rep presentation, where it is just a one-on-one conversation about what is going to happen during this process versus like a sales pitch, which has been traditionally what a listing presentation is. So we have this listing presentation out on Front Agent. So you just go out to, oh, I took it down, but you go out to to Facebook, and then to Front Agents, and then to files. And so that's where you'll see the buyer presentation. And then if you keep scrolling down, you'll get to the listing presentation. And if y'all haven't been out to Front Agent files, there's a lot of different stuff out there, but that's where I pulled this up. So here's our listing presentation. It's, so I normally say, you know, hey, this is just some general information about us, what to expect, call us anytime. We really want to be here for you. And then really I stop at this slide, just like we did on the buyer rep presentation, of talking about, okay, where are we moving on to, making sure I have a good feel for that. And then potentially starting to feel out what a timeline would be, because timeline is such a big part of this conversation of, is this something that we need to sell first or buy? I'm not going to like dig into that immediately. I normally go through a few more slides and then we get into that, but that's where I want to start kind of feeling out what that conversation is and what that what their kind of situation is there. And then we talk a little bit about house preparation, about really, It does need to be clean and organized, all the small things off of the surfaces, remove some items, some personal items that might polarize buyers. I get that question a lot from sellers of like, oh, I know I need to take down this bridal portrait of my firstborn, or I know I need to take down, whatever it is, my Marines flag that's in my office, something like that. Maybe they can. What happens in a home when you see something like that, like a giant bridal portrait or something, it just draws the eye, and it really draws the borrower or the buyer away from experiencing the house, and is more like, oh my gosh, that's a beautiful picture. Man, I wonder where she got that dress. Did I go to high school with her? Or maybe she's a friend of my friend. Maybe I should take a picture of it and text it to her and see if she knows the sellers on this house. And like, it just starts this whole other thing that isn't related to the house. So yes, I do think removing some of the personal items is a good idea. But again, for me, I'm going to rely on Allison to really have that hard conversation with them, because it just depends. I also, and this is again, like from a polarizing perspective, a lot of times I do recommend that they take down any religious symbols. I know that sounds kind of harsh, but like I have, my friend Sherry has a giant cross wall, and every time we sell her house, like I've been on several deals with her now. And so she's like, I know, I have to take down my cross wall. And I'm like, and I feel bad because I'm like, I know, like probably the buyer for your house is a Christian and it's not going to be offensive. But if a Muslim person walks in, if somebody from, an atheist walks in or something, and they are hit with a giant cross wall, you might have just lost your buyer before you ever even gave the house an opportunity to sell to them. And so that's where, just more out of respect for them and out of potentially getting the most money, depersonalizing from that perspective can be a good thing. And so I do really encourage them, like, let's just get it down. The other thing that I've struggled with too, is I have some buyers saying, or some sellers saying, do I need to remove like all of my cute little white bread family pictures because maybe we're going to have a more ethnic buyer come in, or more, some things can be different. Yeah, maybe. I mean, it just depends on what you're comfortable with. But yes, I mean, if you really are taking the posture of, I want whoever comes into this home to consider buying it to be really comfortable and feel like this could be my place. This really, like, this house feels good to me. I don't feel like I'm out of place. Like, this could be mine. Then yeah, we need to get it as neutral as possible, all the way throughout. So all the way from pictures to religious symbols to everything needs to be neutralized. More like what you would see in a model home, right? And I tell them, like, maybe you need to go and walk through some model homes and kind of experience that, see how it looks. It's not stark necessarily, but it is more styled, less personal. And so it just depends. Now, all that to say is, I also have them sold all the time with more personality in them, with more of that family's flavor in there. And so it just depends. I will say one other thing on the personal items is kids' names on walls. That is one of my kind of pet peeves, is that I really do think any homeowner that is selling their home should remove their children's names from their rooms. I mean, so many people have like Ainsley, whatever. Well, that is potentially a safety issue for your child going forward, right? If we publish, hey, this is Ainsley's room, and then some bad guy is going out to the, Warren Elementary and saying, Ainsley, and the girl runs over, like, again, hopefully nothing would ever happen like that. But that is one of my things that I really do try to make sure that they have taken all of that down. Is there anything else that I'm missing that y'all have dealt with before on personalization or staging? Okay. And then sometimes through this slide, we're kind of getting to the, like, man, this is going to be a lot of work. Maybe I should sell it vacant, which I go through a little bit on the outside. And then we really talk about, is it better to sell vacant? Because sometimes it is going to show a lot better. It's going to do a lot better if we can just sell it vacant. And so I'm kind of trying to lead them potentially to that point if they haven't kind of gotten there already. And part of that depends on the house. Like, I don't have a way to walk in or I don't have a way to say before I walk in, like, This one's going to sell better vacant. This one's going to sell better occupied. I don't know, because it just depends. When a house is vacant, everything shows, right? So all the dirt, or any wear on the floor shows, any wear on the paint shows, any like kitchen cabinet that's just a little off hinge shows. Like, so it's really got to be in pretty great condition for that. But it also can make it feel more like a model home, more like a brand new home of, hey, I can walk in and I can personalize this exactly how I want it to be. And so sometimes if the homeowner stuff is just way too personalized, it's not going to fit right, then it's going to be better to sell vacant. So those are just kind of the conversations we want to have. The other thing, and I skipped this part, is as is versus rehab. A lot of clients will ask about, and Haley, like we've kind of been talking about this too, what should I do to fix up the house to get it ready to sell? In this market, and save and accept Haley's situation because she's talking about more of like a $2 million listing. So it's a little bit different advice on those. But on something that is like 300,000, 400,000, something like that, we really have to be, or I feel like a responsibility that we've got to be careful on how much we advise them to fix up, because potentially we may not be able to get them more money for that. Right? Especially in this market, we are pretty capped out on what the appraisal will bring. And just because they got new carpet on the stairs, or just because they stained the back fence, like that's not going to necessarily result in more dollars in their pocket. It may help the house sell faster. It may help, it may result in more money, but I can't guarantee it. And so where I'm really looking for situations is where these are things that really have to be done, that if you don't do it, then you're not either going to be able to sell it. So those would be things like broken windows, major wood rot situations, maybe a kitchen that's missing appliances, or a bathroom that's missing a toilet, stuff like that. Okay, yeah, we need to get finished, because we won't be able to get it financed if you don't have kind of that full house. But if it's something like cosmetic, or hey, should I change out that brass chandelier over the dining room table, something like that, that is going to be more of a touch thing. And so sometimes I'll go back through the comps and really try to figure out, like, if that was done, would that be something where they could spend $250 and I could price it at $500 more, right? And so where it's spend $1, make $2. And it's just tough to know 100% on that. And so a lot of times we are pushing those decisions back onto the seller to say, we don't know for sure, but it does look like this, and this house that were more updated did sell in an average of 3 days, versus these that were not sold in an average of 42 days. And so we do think that it would be advisable for you to go ahead and make a few of those changes to make that happen. And then it's just trying to be as specific as possible with what those are, and figure out, what that looks like overall. So I realize that that's a lot of gray area that I just painted in there. Like, it's not it. I wish it was something easier that I could tell you for sure when we walk in, it's going to be this, this, and this. And if it's not, then we've got a major problem or whatever. But it just is a little more touch and feel. And what do you feel like the overall look is going to be, and what a buyer is going to be okay with? Does anybody have anything on that? I feel like that might be a good place to pause if y'all have any questions or thoughts. Okay. All right. Well, if y'all think of anything, just let me know. Okay. So then after we talk about kind of that house prep, then I'm like, okay, we need to be getting ready for offers. So the goal is to list, and we get offers very quickly. So that means we need to be ready to respond. So it's not something like, once we go live on the market, you can call me back in like 3 or 4 days. It's something that once we go live on the market, I'm going to need you to be pretty available to me 24/7 while we're negotiating these deals and figuring that out. And then I talk about professional photography and staging, which I'm not going to belabor, but I try to explain that process to them of what that's going to look like. Security, I want to make sure that they are thinking through security of their home, and how, if they need to remove anything that's valuable, medicine, those kind of things. And then showings, I normally explain to them what showing time is, how that works, that they'll get calls directly from the showing service, and that they can either reply back and say no or yes or whatever, and however they want to do that. And then pet plan, I want to talk through with them too. Hopefully, I normally am encouraging them to remove the pets completely from the house the first weekend that we're on the market, because our goal is really to get it under contract that first weekend. And so if they can just have the pets totally gone for that whole weekend, then it will make it easier for us to go forward. And then I also want to make sure that they're prepared for their pet situation for during the inspection, during the appraisal, and then during the final walkthrough that the buyer will do right before closing. Cool. And I don't want the dogs to just be in the garage. I'm going to really try to encourage them to really find an offsite location for them. And I talked to them about, like, those dogs are there to protect you. That's, you've trained them to do that. And it is very uncomfortable for them when strangers are walking through their house. And so in order to make it easier for them, why don't we move them offsite? Right. So constantly during this listing presentation, I'm always wanting to go back to what's the benefit to them. It really is kind of a benefit to me, but I'm trying to explain it in a way that is like, hey, homeowner, this is why we're doing this,
because
it's going to help this, this, and this. So
I have a question.
Yeah.
So speaking of security, so if you have a listing that's a vacant house, but still has stuff in it, like, or even if it's just vacant, do you go back at the end of the day after there's been showings and check to make sure? I mean, because I went and helped Catherine with the one on Linwood just to make sure everything was closed up, and I'm a freak about windows, and so I checked. The back door was totally unlocked after the last showing, and one of the windows, I checked all the windows too, and one of them was unlocked in the bedroom, so I locked it. But do you do that for every house that you have at the end of the day? Like, how do you know that people aren't unlocking those things?
So it's not part of my unique value proposition as a listing agent to go to the house and do that, but it could be a part of yours. So there are some listing agents that will offer that as part of their service, that they'll go back over and do that. It's just, for me, like, unfortunately, this is part of the risk of having their house on the market. And so that's why I want to make sure that they have security taken care of, whether they want to, make sure they have their security system on at night, so that, just in case somebody did come and unlock the window and then they are going to try to open a window and get in the house, that their security system would catch that. Or if it's vacant, normally, we just don't have as many issues with people stealing things from a vacant house, but they can, and ultimately it's all on them. There is no, they can try to come after us, but ultimately, like, that's part of why we're telling them this, like, that securing the house is on you, unless you offer that as part of your unique value.
So it could just be kind of every individual, like if they moved out of town or something, then if not, then say, hey, at the end of the day, I might go and check these things, like tell the sellers to.
Yeah, you could, or, a lot of times, like in that situation, if they have moved out of town, be like, do you have a neighbor that might be willing to come over and check the house for you at the end of the day? And I tell them, like, look, the way that we monitor the security from a showing perspective is we are going to use the super key box. It's the most advanced system that we have available to us right now. And it does require that the agent be licensed and bonded in order to get the key out. And so then they are responsible for resecuring the home afterwards. However, they are busy, they are showing the house and trying to do that. And so occasionally you will see a back door left unlocked or something like that. And so if you want to really make sure that the house is secure at the end of the day, then it would be great to have somebody come back through, maybe a neighbor or somebody like that. And so that's when I'll just offer that as a solution, rather than offering me as a solution. Again, not because I'm trying to not help them, but it's just not part of my pricing model to have enough time to go over there and do that necessarily. Maybe it is if it's a house close by me, but if it's not, that's a lot. That's adding to my kind of cost of goods sold of what I'm providing by that many hours of me driving over to that house and resecuring it every single night.
I gotcha. Okay.
And so maybe I offer it like for the first week or something like that. And it just depends on how long the house is on the market too, right? If it's just on the market one weekend, yeah, maybe I might do that. But if it's like, I've had listings that have gone on, 6 months or more, and I'm not going to go over there every day for 6 months. So, anyway.
I think the vacant listing thing too, with the, not only the security part of it, but I just had one in North Arlington that the neighbor would call them and tell them that all the lights were left on. So I was not going to go up there every night to check on that. Plus this was like right before Snowmageddon. We were just having bad weather. So I would call the last agent, you know, midday and just say, hey, you are the last one to show it. Could you maybe really check to make sure that you lock everything up and turn off every light? And that seemed to work. She never called me again after I did that.
Good. I like it.
But yeah, the neighbor thing is.
And sometimes like a little piece of paper on the door for the agent as they're leaving, like, please make sure to rearm alarm or double check to make sure that the back door is locked or something, you know. I don't think anybody's like maliciously, well, I don't think any agents are maliciously trying to do it. Maybe some clients are, or maybe some people coming through on an open house or something like that do have some maliciousness on it. But I think the agents just really are, they're busy. They got a lot going on. And I don't know. I've been accused of.
Well, I think a lot of times now it's not just the clients that they're looking with. They are bringing grandma and cousins like the very first time, because it's like you have to make a decision on it. And so like I've noticed that, like, you know, grandpa, we've already been outside, but like he wants to go like relook at, you know, the AC. And so I don't even like really see him go out there. You know, I've already locked the back door. So yeah, it's probably not like always malicious or on purpose, but just too much going on.
And I mean, probably like Linwood, like they had showing after showing after showing after showing. And so it's hard to blame it on anybody because it's like, well, gosh, there were so many showings. Like, how would I have known to go back and check all the windows or something like that? So it probably was.
And it was an open house too.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And so on open, I tell them, you know, we're going to make sure the house is secure, but on the others, it's just tough. So good question though. And that's the thing, like, so sellers will ask you questions about what's really important to them, right? So a seller may never question that. And it's not that it's like totally not important to them. It's just, they're more concerned about the photography or they're more concerned about whatever. And so that's what having like just something to go off of, just to kind of touch some high points. A lot of times then they'll stop and say, okay, let's talk more about this. And that's helpful for me too, because I don't know what their hot buttons are. And so, you know, sometimes I'll get all the way through the presentation super fast. I'm like, okay, y'all didn't ask any questions. Like, what is big deal to y'all? And so then we'll kind of go back and talk about that. Good questions. Okay, so seller's disclosure and survey. I normally will hand them a seller's disclosure at the listing appointment and then tell them I'll come back and pick it up filled in at the picture appointment. But you don't have to do it that way. There is an electronic company, Seller Shield, that it's kind of like a TurboTax situation for the seller's disclosure, where it will help the seller answer some of the questions. Like if they don't know what it means by attic fan, it actually doesn't mean like the turbines in the attic. It means like an actual attic fan, like from the 50s that turns on, you know, so something like that. It would have a little explanation for that on there. So some of them are just more technology driven and they want to do that. Others are like, no, I would rather fill it out by hand. Whatever they want to do is totally fine with me, or whatever y'all want to do. And then survey, I'm going to try to get a survey from them too when I come back for pictures, whatever. Same, on HOA. So one of the outs on the contract is that the buyer has an out until they get all the HOA documentation and have an opportunity to review it. A way that the seller can tighten that up is by providing the HOA resale package prior to putting it on the market. Okay. And so if they have the seller's disclosure, the survey and T47 and HOA resale package all together and out on MLS, when the buyer makes the first offer, then that to me is the best way to tighten up the offer and not have just lingering outs for the buyer when they're going forward on it. So I ask my sellers to go out to their HOA and order a resale certificate package. Sometimes they're called different things, but resale package. They want to order that and get it for me so that way I can include it. Now, most sellers don't like it when I say this because it costs them money. It's normally between $250 and $450 to get a resale package. And a lot of times the HOAs have been conditioned, hey, I don't provide this to the homeowner, I provide it to the title company after they go under contract. And so I've got a few weeks to get that over to the title company, and then they'll have it for closing. So that is what happens most of the time, but I don't want it to be the way that it happens most of the time. I want it to be where we have the HOA documents in already, so that that buyer doesn't have an out on the contract. So like right now, Erin has some clients that are supposed to close on the 14th. So, I mean, what, 7 to 8 days from right now, we still don't have the HOA resale package on it. Now the lender went out and pulled like the bylaws and some things off of the website. That's not what I'm talking about. We actually need to have a legitimate piece of paper that says, for this specific address, this is how much they've paid in dues. This is how much the HOA has in reserves. It's this resale certificate. We still don't have it yet. And so I was telling the buyer on Aaron's deal yesterday, I'm like, I mean, y'all still have an out. Like, you could still totally walk away from that house that you've had under contract for over a month. You could get all of your earnest money back. And, you know, you don't have to go forward with it at all. And all we just have to say is, no, thank you, we're going to go. And so that's where, and because they were concerned about the buyer on their house. So like, this buyer that you're signing up on our house, like, they're not going to have an out on the contract. I'm like, oh gosh, there's so many outs on the contract, but we have tried to tighten them all up. So all that to say is, that's why I really advise this on HOA, but it is different than what everybody else talks about. So just know, I know that it's different, but it still is, in my opinion, the best deal for the seller, and the way that we're acting in really their fiduciary interest. Any questions on that? The other thing that I hear a lot of times is that that package will only last about 90 days. And that is true, but they will do a renewal. And normally the renewal is only like $50. So if we paid, you know, let's say $450 initially, and for whatever reason, the house didn't sell in that 90 days, then they would be potentially have to pay another $50. But to not have the buyer have an out on the contract, it's worth $50, right? I mean, they're going to have to pay for the resale package anyway. So, okay, pricing strategy. So we talked a lot about CMA last time. So that's really what we just go over here. 2021 market. Again, it's just kind of talking about the market, about how crazy it is, about what, you know, some of the things that they can expect, but also temper that with, this doesn't mean you can just price it at anything, because the buyer still has to get financing. And so we're going to have to figure out what that level is, and price it at the right price where somebody can still get it financed or pay that amount in cash above and beyond an appraisal amount. Then kind of like the buyer rep package, we go over sale timeline of getting the house ready and listing. I normally recommend to list on a Wednesday or Thursday. Really, I like Thursday morning, and for showings to start Thursday afternoon. Then showings would go Thursday afternoon, Friday during the day, Saturday during the day, and then hopefully we have multiple offers by that situation, and we call for highest and best offers due by Sunday afternoon. The reason why we wouldn't want to list on a Monday or Tuesday is because if we got an offer, from a great offer from a buyer on Tuesday, likely we can't kind of make them wait all the way through to Sunday. But if we got a buyer, or if we got a offer late in the day on Thursday, making them wait until Sunday is relatively normal. And so it does kind of suck that we're kind of playing the buyers and trying to get some multiple offer situation, but in this world, we're representing the seller, and that's the right thing for the seller. That does give the seller the best potential to get the best offer, is to get into a multiple offer situation if they're a house that can do that. Cool. Okay.
Amy?
Yeah.
For that, is that something that you would put in the MLS up front, that is kind of the plan?
I don't. The way that I normally do it is I put on there that we will present offers as received. And then after we get two, then I have that conversation with the seller of, okay, we got two. They are either outstanding or they're kind of So we don't want to scare off potentially other buyers from showing the house if they're right? I don't want to scare off buyers from showing the house. And so we would recommend not saying that we're in multiple offers until we get a few better offers in, and then maybe we go back to that. If they are like amazingly fantastical offers, we might just accept one of those and not go to multiple offers too. So it just depends. And I'm always going to let the seller make that call rather than me. I might make a suggestion. Hey, I think now would be a good time. Let's call for highest and best at this time or whatever. But I'm just always tempering it with that. I don't want people to flee us if we do call for multiple offers. And sometimes that can happen where then we don't get enough offers. Good question. So then we just go over more sale timeline. Then we talk about contingency, like what does it look like to have a contingent offer? Because I want to make sure, and this kind of starts the rest of our conversation, but I want to make sure that they understand what happens if somebody puts in a contingent offer on the sale on their house that they're selling, that buyer can get out of the contract all the way up until their house sells, which normally is like the day before the house that they're buying, our house, closes. And so it puts a lot of risk to me on the seller for that. And so we want to explain that from a contingency perspective. Really what I'm trying to do is explain that to them so that they can start hearing that from a seller perspective. And then I can flip that on them over to, and that's why I'm not going to be able to make a contingent offer for you as a buyer. And they're like, oh shit. Like, yeah, I get that now because you just said how awful it was on, that we don't want to accept an offer. And I was nodding along and like, yeah, definitely we don't want a contingent offer. But then they're like, it just like light bulbs go off and they're like, oh yeah, okay, I do see what you're saying. And so it at least helps me kind of get them where then it's like, okay, so I need you to kind of help me decide which option you're going to choose after that. And so then we go through 4 different options of, are you going to list first, move into temporary housing, and then buy your forever house? Are you going to list first and then just pick something to move into for your forever house so that we can try to get them both to line up on the same close date? Or are you going to see if you can qualify with your lender to buy first and then sell, and then we put yours on the market with the goal of trying to get them to line up, but also with the strategy of, hey, we're not writing it with a contingency. And so we're going to have to, really have a plan B to go to about if for whatever reason your house doesn't sell or it doesn't sell on time, that you still have a way to go through and purchase that other house. And I went through those really quickly, but so in the next nuts and bolts, we'll talk a little bit more about that, about those 4 different options, because that's really what I'm talking to most people about. And y'all, this is what most agents are not talking about. They are going in and their listing presentation ends here. And they say, you know what? I can sell your house for top dollar. I've got a sign and a super out in the car, sign right here on the bottom line. We're ready to go. I have all of your stuff ready. We can get a photographer out here next week. Like, we are ready to get your house sold. And they totally forget that there is a true family here with kids and a dog and whatever that need a place to transition to. And they have not addressed it at all. And so I think we like super raise the bar from a professionalism perspective and just from a like help perspective, like a nice person perspective, the improving lives perspective, like by really talking through like, it doesn't matter that we can get you top dollar for your house right now if we can't figure out where your family transitions to and what that overall transition time looks like. And so let's really stop and take some time and talk about timeline, talk about best plan for you, talk about financing, talk about some of those other things of how to make that work. And so not that I rushed through this part, but normally I would have gotten all the way through down to that part in about 15 minutes because I'm just like, I'm not trying to stop them from asking questions, but honestly, some of that just doesn't really matter to them. They don't need to know kind of how the sausage is made on it. They need to be more talking to me about this big picture stuff. How is this going to look overall? And they don't want to sit down and talk with me for 2 hours or 4 hours, or, like I need to like get it to where it's a more manageable conversation time. Cool. Any questions or anything about that before we wrap up?
You know, I have a listing presentation tonight.
Yep.
And I was like, oh, gung ho. And then I was like, oh my God, we got to find them somewhere to live.
Yeah.
I mean, that's, I have all this stuff coming at me, but we've got that.
Yeah.
And I don't know.
And sometimes you'll sit down and y'all will talk about that and they'll say, yeah, we know that we're going to have to find a place to live, but I've already talked to my parents and we're going to go live in the upstairs of their house and it's going to be fine. Like we know we want you to sell it. We want you to get us the most money possible. Then we'll deal with that later. Great. Option number one, we're done. You know, but then other times they're like, oh yeah, like we didn't even really think that far through. Like we were just so excited about the number that you gave us on our house. Like, I can't believe that we're going to make that much money for this. We just didn't really think through what that meant on the road. And so some of that, and that's what I'm hearing so many people right now, like saying like, oh my gosh, the market's so crazy. I'm going to have to spend so much on that next house that there's no way I would want to sell and like do that right now. Well, to me, it's moving kind of in conjunction, right? So yes, you may have to spend more money on that next house, but the good news is you're making a lot more money on your house. And so it's kind of, the tide is rising together. So it's not like this like crazy amount that you're going to have to come up with unless you're a first time buyer. But if you're selling something and buying, then hopefully it is working in conjunction and making it work. So anyway, so that'll be exciting going on a listing appointment. Yay.
Yeah. And I just, you know, I keep telling myself that all I need to do is go through this presentation with them, bring them the facts, and then it's really up to them to decide what they can and can't do.
Absolutely. And it's kind of this like mushy buyer rep / listing presentation / no real presentation conversation that has to happen right now. But that's still right. So you're not doing anything wrong by that being kind of what may end up as the outcome, but you can have the PowerPoint pulled up so you at least feel like, okay, I'm starting with something, like we're starting the conversation there. Good. Other questions or things people are dealing with? All right, we'll be excited to hear about more of that next week. So I am going to keep going. I know on Nuts and Bolts right now on the calendar, I have it ending this week, but I'm going to keep going. I think we've got another 2 or 3 weeks of going over sellers. And then Andrew's going to start a series on lead gen and like how to build business and doing some more of that too. So, so I'll get us through kind of the month of April doing seller side, listing side, and then we'll transition over to Andrew and do that. So, all right, cool deal. Go get them, y'all. Excited for Deanna's presentation, and then Haley's got one tomorrow too. So y'all go kill it.
Thank
you. See you later.
Bye.